Mike Demergers here with the president, El Presidente of the Houston Roughnecks, Mr. Brian Cooper. Brian, thank you so much for joining me on this XFL podcast. And how does that sound? The XFL is kicking off a 10-week season. It's right around the corner.
Yes, Mike, thank you for having me. It is right around the corner. We will be kicking off our first game against the LA Wildcats over at TD ECU Stadium over in the University of Houston. So we are really excited. I'm going to actually go over to the stadium in a little bit to take a look at everything, and just really excited about what's happening.
Now, I don't know if you're aware, I'm a big USFL fan, and I wrote a book about the USFL. And June Jones, the head coach of the Roughnecks, returns to where he was the Gamblers. So you got June Jones, you got Teddy Cottrell. Returns as he was the Generals defensive coordinator way back when. So June Jones knows the terrain in Houston.
Absolutely. He and the legendary Mouse Davis, formulated the run and shoot with the quarterback that many people know, Mr. Jim Kelly, the great Hall of Famer, got his start in the USFL with the Gamblers. And June has that distinct pleasure of having coached two Hall of Fame quarterbacks in both Jim Kelly and with Warren Moon later with the Oilers. And they used to light it up out there in the Astrodome, and June has some great memories of being out there with the Gamblers, and the fans come up to us as well. One of the things that's been really exciting is that the fans actually talk about the Gamblers a lot, and I think it's just because that's the last time spring football was here in Houston, and they really missed it, and they were big fans, and they're excited about what the Roughnecks are going to do.
Well, George Foreman used to perform wedding ceremonies at halftime during some of those games. I don't know if you're aware of that. Now, so June Jones is the coach. He's the GM, so he's in charge of the talent. The president, he's in charge of really the business end of things. How did you get involved in this? And of course, you're well aware that spring leagues had failed in the past, and this is part 2 for the XFL.
Well, and I would not, Mike, I'll be careful to say, I would not call this part 2. I think this is its own product, its own new product and new venture. But I got involved about 8 months ago. The person who reached out to me about would I be interested in become president of the Houston XFL team. At the time, it was called XFL Houston. We didn't have a nickname yet. And I had been following what they had been doing with the XFL that was founded in 2018. I thought that the 2-year runway was great. I think that Mr. McMahon hiring Oliver Luck as the commissioner and Jeffrey Pollack as the president and COO, they were both great moves, demonstrated, that both Oliver and Jeffrey are universally well respected in the sports world as sports business minds. Oliver here in Houston is sports royalty. He was president of the Sports Authority. He was responsible as the president of the Sports Authority of building both, NRG Stadium, Minute Maid, and Toyota Center all got built on his watch. And then when he was president of the Dynamo, BBVA got built. And so he's very well known in the city, and very well respected in the sports world. Jeffrey the same way. Jeffrey founded the Sports Business Daily with Chuck Todd, and has been just phenomenal in with respect to his time with the NBA and the NFL with the Chargers. And so both of them, I think that was a very good move on the league's part to bring those guys in. And so I think that with that, you'd ask about what happens with with previous leagues. I'm always careful on this one to say, there have been a number of leagues that have begun, but I think if you parse out, the leagues and do the following qualification, which leagues have had the kind of television contract that we have in this league? And I think if you do that in the last 60 years, I'd probably argue that there's only been 2. The AFL with their contract with NBC back in the 60s, and the USFL, they had a contract with the broadcast contract with ABC. The XFL has broadcast contracts with both ABC and Fox, and they're very robust broadcast deals. 8 of our 10 games are going to be on broadcast television. The other 2 will be on FS1, and so FS1 is also a first-tier nationally televised cable along with ESPN. So I think that we're going to have some pretty significant television resources behind us as well, which I think separates us out a little bit and really puts us kind of on a plane with the only last 2 leagues. Like I said, that had similar deals, which were the USFL and the old AFL.
And the USFL, before they wound up folding, they had a deal for $170 million with ABC and ESPN, but they wanted to go the courtroom route led by Donald Trump and the antitrust suit, something you know about antitrust, for $1.7 billion. They were awarded $1, which was trebled to $3.
Mike, it was trebled to $3. Trebled to $3 as antitrust violations are, trebled to $3. I'm always reluctant to discuss the components of that, but I think the USFL in the spring, when they were in the spring, I think that they did very well, and so I'll leave it at that. But I think that with that, I think fans remember the USFL. I remember the USFL as a kid. I remember the players that came out of the USFL, and I remember the teams and I think it was exciting. And I think we're going to try to we're going to be able to hopefully bottle that excitement as well. I think football is America's number one sport. And I think that there's the avid football fans, my understanding is they make up about 38 million folks. And I think what we're trying to do is expand and extend that football calendar. And I think we're bringing football, to additional people. We're giving them more access, but we're expanding the calendar. Our motto is for the love of football. And I think we're kind of extending that love with the XFL.
And we're talking with Brian Cooper, the president of the Houston Roughnecks. Let's talk about the rules. I think the rules are kind of fascinating. I love the idea of almost getting rid of the kicking game in football. I've been saying it for years. So talk about the point after. There's going to be three options. You can go for get 1 point, 2 points, or 3 points from the 2, 5, or 10-yard line. I absolutely love this.
I think it's very exciting, Mike. I think that you're going to get the opportunity to come back, right? You're down by 17 with a couple minutes to go. You have the opportunity. It's a 2-score game and not a 3-score game. I think it changes your mentality on strategy, and I think it's great. And I would push back a little bit on whether or not the kicking game is going away, because the new kickoff rule, where the players will engage within 5 yards of one another on like the 30 to 35, once the ball has been received and put back into play by the kick returner. I actually think that's going to lead to kickoffs. I think what you see now is that the kickoff has become, for a number of reasons, that the kickoff has basically, in both college and pro, is just booted out of the end zone.
Yeah, it's benign right now. Yeah, it's benign right now.
And I think the way we're doing it is going to bring it back in a big way. I had said before that I was fascinated by it. The first time I saw the kickoff and learned about the kickoff rule, I was fascinated by it, and I said that I thought the kickoff rule, what they've formulated for kickoff, would be emulated by every level of football in the next 4 or 5 years. And I think here in Houston, the Greater Houston High School Coaches Association is going to implement it for their Bayou Bowl. That Bayou Bowl is an annual all-star game that's played in the spring between the top players from Louisiana and top players from Texas, and they're going to try to kick off in that game. And I think that I would be surprised if in the next 3 or 4 years high schoolers aren't using that kickoff rule. I think it's a fantastic rule. It keeps the kickoff in the game. It minimizes the collision, but it keeps the football. It keeps the kickoff. It keeps the kickoff relevant. You have to bring it out, and it keeps that in the game. And I think it's going to be, like I said, I think it's one of the more fascinating rule changes. The rule changes have been made. I think to enhance the game. They're not gimmicky. Someone asked, whether I think, it's not, when you're watching our game, it's a football game. You're not going to be, there's nothing in there that's going to be so radical that you're going to be, whoa, wait a minute, what's that? So, again, I think they've spent a lot of time and care over the last couple of years really putting it together, learning what the fans want. And I think they've done a fantastic job of putting that product together.
Now this rule I really like, because I'm sure you remember playing, back in the schoolyard when you were able to play it was almost kill the ball carrier with some of the games, but the double forward pass, this I think is exciting. Explain that.
So I think it's a little bit. I explained. I was talking to a fan about it a few hours ago at an event, and I'll tell you this. I don't think it is as I think people have something in their mind that, like, it's a little bit like Stanford, California, for example.
Or throwing the ball all the way across field.
Kevin Mullen ends up scoring, the touchdown. I don't think it's going to be. I think more Music City Miracle,
okay.
Right? Where there's people in town. There's people. What I've been arguing is that the Music City Miracle is probably a good example where, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you still argue that Wycheck was a forward pass, right? And so what I've basically said is, with the new rule, the Music City Miracle, no matter if you're in Buffalo or in Nashville, the Music City Miracle would have been a legal play, right? So I think that's where you're going to see the major difference. Both passes have to be completed in front of the line of scrimmage, so it's not like I don't think it's going to be as radical as people think. I think it does bring an additional wrinkle to the game where you can do some things and have somebody in that is a additional passer. But I think you're going to have something a little bit more like the Music City Miracle, where right now, if you were to try to do that play and Wycheck is in front of you, if it becomes a illegal forward pass. But instead, I think I think you're going to see it. I think it's going to look and feel a little bit more like that, where you could argue that is legal, and then if there's a second pass made, that can be done. But that's where I think you're going to see some changes there. But I don't think I think it's going to be it's a little bit of a twist on the flea flicker. I think it's a great rule change, but I think it's going to be one that I don't think people are going to be. I don't think it's as radical, I think, as people believe it is.
Now let me ask you this: looking at it's going to be a forward pass. So, but if it's behind the line and it's incomplete, is it an incomplete pass or is it still a fumble then?
It's an incomplete pass, is my understanding.
Okay, so
but that's what I believe.
So offenses will be more inclined to go with something because it's not as risky where you're going to turn the ball over. We'll get to the game clock in a second. The overtime, I think there's nothing more exciting than in hockey, the shootout basically, and soccer, the penalty kicks and all that stuff. So this is exciting too.
I agree. I think having the teams line up at the 5 and having 5 opportunities each to score and then sort of quote unquote win the overtime, I think is great. I think that they've taken the best things from college, where you have that equity where both teams get the ball in the 25, but you don't have the situation where you have an 8 overtime game. I think back to that LSU Texas A&M game where it was 74-72 or whatever, and they went into 8 overtimes, and the kids end up playing essentially another game. I think you don't have that, but you have the finality of getting a victory as well, which is great, and you don't have the kind of what you see in the pro game a little bit where you have a situation where a talented player may not get the opportunity to get back on the field to actually try to score. And so I think that this is exciting. I think it's an exciting change. I'm hoping we're not playing a ton of overtime games. I want us to win all our games in regulation if we can, but I think the fans are going to be really excited when it does happen. It is going to be a very exciting rule change. I think it's going to be great for the game. As
we try to reach the youth, and even as ourselves in our 40s and 50s, or 30s or whatever, our attention span is dwindling. I've been saying if baseball wants to save itself, they got to go to 7 innings, 145 games. Talk about the game running clock, the running clock in the XFL. It's going to speed up the game a little bit where things aren't going to drag on.
You've got the games are probably going to come in between 2.5, 3 hours. I think that's what fans want. As Oliver says, less stall, more ball, and I think that's going to be a key component. The play clock is cut from 45 seconds to 25 seconds. And I think again, this won't be a radical change for the fans. I think that many of them have gotten used to seeing the sugar huddle or the no huddle offenses now, and I think that I think most fans want to see that action. They want to see that fans. I haven't heard a fan ever say, man, I really love when they're in the huddle. So I think that they want to see the action and they want to see it moving quickly. So I don't think I think we're speaking to what the fans want with respect to the timing of the game. Within 2 minutes, the ball then goes. The clock does stop on a dead ball, and so that's a little bit different, I think. Then so I think it's a little bit more like the college game where the ball has to be reset, and then the clock starts again, and there'll be an additional official out there who's sole purpose is to spot the ball and to make sure the ball is reset. And that's going to actually, that to me is also just an amazing component of time. I don't think we really thought about how much time it takes to get a ball back. You know, now with someone just simply dedicated to actually putting the ball and getting it set, it does accelerate the game a little bit as well. And so, but I think the fans are going to be very, very happy about it as well. I think that it's going to be an exciting component to the game.
And we're talking with Brian Cooper, the president of the Houston Roughnecks, as the XFL looks to kick off their 10-week season. You know, one of the things that the USFL did, big-name quarterbacks, big-name players, Herschel Walker, Jim Kelly, they actually drafted Dan Marino as the number 1 pick. Oh, by the way, the Jets missed something there. You know, what did the NFL miss that the USFL knew? Not that I'm a bitter Jet fan, FYI.
Look, I will just say this. I mean, like, you know, it's a great question. I think I'm going to give some love to Ken O'Brien. But, you know, I love Dan Marino. He's the all-time great. But, you know, Ken O'Brien had a pretty good NFL career. So I think, you know,
number 1 rated in the NFL in 1985. Number 1 rated.
I will give him some love. So I think he always gets kind of lost in that mix when talking about what happened there. Look, I think Marino was certainly the best. I mean, the '83 draft was just, you know, you look at that draft and, you know, started with Elway and then with Marino. I mean, it's incredible. But I think Ken O'Brien should get a little love.
Well, listen, the Jets started off the season in 1986 10-1, and the year before
10-1,
10-1, and the year before they were 11-5. So they won 21 of 26 games. That's pretty good for the NFL. But getting back to the XFL, so the league's premise, they're really not going to go after the big name players. So what do you think the attraction is going to be? How are you going to get your football fans into the park and watching the games?
Well, I think, look, it's a great question, Mike. I think that the key is, and what I've always wanted is that it really is about the fans. It's fans above all, and what we do there is we build the game experience. And not to take anything away from we want to do great things on and off the field. And I think that with that, you know, it's very important for us to build our brand and to build a brand that you know, I'm excited about how we'll be able to extend the football calendar, but grant greater access to fans and fans who may not necessarily have had that access or have the means. I mean, our tickets are very affordable. You know, most season tickets start at $100 for 5 games. The most expensive ones are still less than $500 for 5 games. And I think that's what's going to do is going to provide a great fan experience for a lot of people and give them a more up close and personal way to see the product. And so I think the way we do that is we build this one fan at a time. We've been out, you know, here in Houston, for example, in many of the neighborhoods in Houston, from Cypress to Katy to the Woodlands to Midtown and downtown and Third Ward, and you know, we've been, you know, getting to know the people and wanting them to make sure they come into the building and make sure that we give them the best customer service we can, do all the small things correctly, and have those people leaving this building thinking, man, this is just I just had a wonderful time at the game, and I can't wait to get back. And they're going to serve as our brand ambassadors at that point too. They're going to have taken that experience, and they're going to go back and talk to their folks and say, hey, look, I had a great time at the game. And so that's what we're trying to do. Make sure, you know, that's how we're building this team. And I think we're trying to do it in a number of different ways, from affordability to access and all those things in between. And that's how I think we're going to build that fan base and attract fans and get them to come to the games and get them to stay at the game.
Well, I know a lot of spring football fans are hoping you know this works this time. You took one of the nicknames you have the Dallas Renegades, taken from the Orlando Renegades, and you had the Seattle Dragons, and there was a Barcelona Dragons of Team Europe. So a couple of cool names, I think, and I think you're how did the nickname come about for the Houston franchise?
Well, you know, I think it was both a league and community-based effort. I think that, you know, I love the nickname. I think it really reflects our city. Obviously, with the energy and space capitals of the world. We also have a significant medical presence here in Houston as well. I mean, I think Houston's just a phenomenal city. But I think, you know, when you think of Roughnecks, you think of people who put their hard hats on in the morning. They go to work. They get their lunch pails. Men and women who are resilient, who work hard. full of integrity, and I think the nickname it best exemplifies the city, and I think I hope we do justice by the nickname.
You're not going to put any garbage cans and bang on garbage cans to steal signals, are you?
No.
You know, I had to throw that one out there. I couldn't let that one go.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brian Cooper, the president of the Houston Roughnecks of the XFL, as they get ready to kick off a 10-week season, 2020.